Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Brand Innovators Livecast series. My name is Diana Dilworth. I'm the managing editor here at Brand Innovators. Welcome to the C-Suite and Marketing Leadership Livecast. Today is really special. I'm thrilled to kick off this event. We've got some great speakers, an awesome lineup of marketers. Before we get started, we'd like to thank all the marketers, sponsors, and you, the audience, for tuning in and helping make this event possible. Throughout the event, you will be able to use the Q&A widget and the chat widget at the bottom of your screen. We encourage you to engage with our speakers and other attendees and to use the widgets throughout the program to ask questions and to share comments. I have the wonderful pleasure of not only being your MC, but also moderating our first session. So with that said, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Rachel Beckett, Vice President of Marketing at Multiverse. Hi, Rachel.
Hey, great to meet you, Jenna.
Great to meet you too. Great to have you here today. So I would love to get this kicked off by just having you tell us a little bit about Multiverse and your role there and give us a brief introduction.
Great. I'm just going to pop that filter off because for whatever reason, it was appearing backwards on the screen.
Oh, okay.
I'm Rachel. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Multiverse. I've been here just under a year, and I've spent my career in technology. Previously was at LinkedIn, and I'm excited to really share today like how I'm thinking about brand strategy at Multiverse and how I think about leadership here too.
Awesome. And what do you guys do there at Multiverse for people who are watching that aren't familiar with the brand?
That's a great question. Multiverse really aims to build a diverse set of future leaders through apprenticeships. We really have a belief that the education system today doesn't adequately prepare individuals to start their career or advance their career. A single shot of learning in that sort of 3 or 4 year period, whether you're in the US or the UK, isn't what you need to develop the technical and durable skills you'll need throughout your career.
Excellent. So can you talk about what is one trend, technology, or opportunity you are following and excited about for the future and would like to learn more about?
Great question. I've never been a big trends person. I think new channels emerge all the time. And the most successful brands have a pretty clear understanding of their positioning and message and how that adapts to new channels. Think of like a couple of years ago, right? No brand was on TikTok. And the most successful brands understand like what that channel is and how their positioning and messaging will show up on that channel. And it hasn't, ultimately a channel shouldn't change the strategy of a brand. A brand strategy evolves over time in consideration of new channel sets available. When I do think about trends, I was just looking at Snap. They've just reforecasted for this quarter. And they've done that because the economic climate is declining faster than they expected. And for Snap, the economic climate means ad revenue. And so Snap is expecting advertisers to spend much less in this year ahead. And they're expecting us to spend much less because they're expecting us to have smaller budgets because they're expecting our company's revenue to decline. And so when I think about the year ahead for marketers, I really think the really clear strategy, the really clear understanding of your return on investment, and the really clear understanding of how the value your brand is bringing to that return on investment will be critical.
Absolutely. Can you talk about your approach to leadership and how your leadership has evolved over the years?
Yeah, great question. You know, leadership is, I feel like it's an interesting question, right? We're really just here all helping people through their careers. And if you're fortunate enough to be a people manager and a leader, that's an enormous privilege. When I think about it, I think people want a place where they can learn and a place where they can feel psychologically safe doing it. And so I try my hardest to create that environment. I try to give people stretch opportunities. And when they occasionally fail, I try to be there to be that safety net for them. I think that management style is a little bit harder earlier in your career, because at this point in my career, I'm fortunate to have the social capital and experience, to give people that freedom to learn, and B, to know that I can probably fix it. And I think early in your career, it's a little bit harder to sort of give out so much autonomy to your team. But I do think that's when you get the best work, is when effectively, my growth leader, like for our B2C team, or my growth leader for our B2B team, they truly, run their own departments incredibly. And I'm really here to make sure that our strategy sits together, and that they have what they need to be excellent.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I'm curious, since you are actually in the business of helping people find their careers, be it through at Multiverse, through internships and whatnot, and then at LinkedIn previously, these connections. How does that help you think about and phrase your approach to cultivating leadership in the community?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I think about what attracted me to LinkedIn and Multiverse, I really care about marketing for missions I believe in. And I think getting equitable access to opportunity and equitable development throughout your career isn't and just an incredibly pressing issue for our time. And so how do I think that influences how I manage? I think it means I'm very conscious of where everyone's starting point is. I really measure the distance traveled. So everyone did not start at the same place, in their life, in their career. And so when I think about what someone's achieved, especially when I'm looking at a resume, I look to understand where their starting point was. And then that's something we do when we hire at Multiverse, and it's absolutely something we do in our admissions team. We think about apprentices. Our apprentices, we're absolutely ensuring we're assessing for potential, not pedigree.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Can you talk about what drew you to marketing early in your career, and then what intrigues you about marketing today?
I think early in my career, I just knew I really liked people. And I think that led to an interest in consumer behavior. In the UK, we do these things called A-levels, and I did one in psychology, and I realized that, I was sort of deeply interested in human motivation. And so that's sort of how I ended up in a career in marketing. My first job was in public relations. I then moved to what was called digital marketing. Then I don't think we'd call it that now. I think we'd call it growth marketing. What sort of motivates me today, I'd say it really is I've changed from being motivated by all human behavior to being motivated by equitable. It's a change from motivation in all human behavior to a motivation in equitable access. And what equality means, actually, not just in access to jobs, but in how we market. We have words are very powerful. And we have an enormous responsibility as marketers to think about how do our teams represent the communities we're talking about, and how do we make sure the words we're using are helping advance how people think about critical topics and issues. And so that's what motivates me today. It's making sure that we're part of changing assumptions that are made.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me an example of some work you've done that supports that mission?
Yeah, great. Here at Multiverse, we're kind of lucky to get to do that every day. We really think a lot about, so one of our challenges of our category, right, is the word apprentice is up in people's minds, something quite specific. In the UK, it's changed quite a lot in the UK, but I think in the UK, it's still seen as, not as good as university at times. And in the US, it's just, I know that. Those happen in Europe, right? I hear in Germany, they're excellent for auto manufacturers. And I think our job over the past several years has been to change what it means to be an apprentice. An apprentice is something incredibly aspirational. What could be a better outcome than spending several years at an organization? It's between 12 and 15 months in the US and 1 and 3 years in the UK, depending on the program you pick. Graduating your apprenticeship with a qualification, no college or university debt, an incredible experience on your resume at companies like American Express, Google, Cisco, Barclays, and I know how talented our apprentices are because they sit on my team. And so I really, I really do think that like, when I think about how we advance what like society thinks, I think it's about like, what is that yardstick on a resume? Too often people say, oh, Oxford, oh, Cambridge, oh, Stanford, like they must be smart. And we know those snap judgments happen every day, probably in many organizations of the listeners today. And the only way to change those snap judgments is to give someone an alternative, something they can quickly look at and say, oh, yes, that also means incredible. And an alternative to a very like high profile university is a high profile apprenticeship. And we're here to deliver a high profile apprenticeship to change who has access to those opportunities.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk about what some of those apprenticeships might be in, for example, which fields? And you mentioned such big brands like American Express and Google and Cisco. So what does an apprenticeship look like some of your clients?
Great question. So at American Express, our apprentices actually are in software engineering. And so that is a very common program that many of our apprentices go into. Our American Express apprentices, I think, are at $70,000. So these are highly paid jobs. We're not like here to deliver an unpaid internship. We're here to deliver like meaningful salaries with meaningful salary trajectory. And so our software engineering apprenticeships are like 12, 15 months long, and the individuals spend 12 weeks getting to grips with the basics, and then they're into the job. And it is 80% of the time delivering real code shipped to real features, and 20% of the time developing your skills. And that applies to software engineering and also applies to marketing. Our marketing apprenticeship, we have marketing apprentices at WPP, at Omnicom, and I can speak to our marketing apprentices because I'm so fortunate to have two on my team. Our TikTok channel, our social media is our top source of apprentice supplies. Our TikTok channel is run by Yasmin. Yasmin's 19. She's one of our incredible apprentices, and she's so good at it because she does not have to imagine what the persona of a 19-year-old is. Mm-hmm. Yasmin is our target audience. She deeply resonates with our target audience. And most importantly, she's deeply committed to being successful in her role because there's no cause she cares more about than the journey that we're on. Software engineering, marketing, data, those are like a key three. And then we have one called Digital Business Accelerator. And that's really focused on rounding out a sort of broad skill set like you might think of for an MBA. But instead, these are all available for 16 to 24-year-olds in the UK and 18 to 26-year-olds in the US. And then those similar skill sets are also available to people later in their careers who want to upskill. So you or I, Diana, we could take a data apprenticeship at this point in our career. We could change our data abilities from being able to do a pivot table in Excel to being able to query a database. And actually for marketers, I do think as our data acumen needs to advance and improve, like I'd actually see many marketers benefiting from that in the future.
Excellent. Amazing. So can you tell me, going back to your own career, what traits that you possess that has made you a successful marketer, and how do you nurture that?
I'd say I love to know what's going on in other departments. I just love to know what's going on in all aspects of my life. And I think when you get to leadership, your job is to understand what every department is doing in the business, understand the impact that department's decisions might have on your work. For example, if engineering has an enormous list of priorities and maybe marketing's like pixels aren't going to get added, or the changes we need to the acquisition flow aren't going to happen, it's really important that you understand what has made it above their priority list. And you can make the justification and business case for why, your project will deliver more business return than the ones above the line. But if you're not able to speak to the VP of engineering, you're not able to understand those other priorities on their list, and you're not able to sort of build that business case and have that discussion, you're not going to have a seat at the strategic table. And most importantly, you're not going to be able to advocate for the best things for the business that you work at. And so when I think about what has made me successful, I guess I've always taken the stretch project. Every time a project comes up that, is it really marketing? When I was in IC, I would take every project that wasn't really marketing because I just wanted to know, I remember doing like an internal consulting project at LinkedIn where I had to reorg a 4,000 person sales team. Nothing to do with marketing, but I took it because I now know how to reorg a 4,000 person sales team. And that is an opportunity that comes up so rarely in your career that I understand deeply how every process in sales works, because I had to remap every salesperson from the job they were in to the job they were going to and their skill and knowledge gaps. So because I've done that, I know the skill and knowledge so many flavors of salespeople need, that when I'm training them on how to sell a new product from marketing, it feels like a piece of cake.
Right. That's amazing. I love that example. Can you talk about other experiences you've had that you feel have helped prepare you for the leadership role that you're in today?
I think I've been really fortunate with international opportunities. If you were watching this in the UK, I mean, few brands, there are plenty of examples, but most brands have to look out of the UK to grow to be big enough. And so they'll look to Europe to expand, or they'll look to the US to expand. Multiverse operates in the US and the UK. I'm here in New York today. And so because of that, marketers who have experience in Europe or in Asia or in the US will be more valuable. And I have had the opportunity to live and work in the US for a decade, in Beijing for 2 years, and in London, actually the least time, I think 5 years maybe, but I am originally British. And I think that has given me the authority to be able to speak on international marketing strategies, made me deeply empathetic. You really do, many people who've even taken vacations, you do by spending time in other cultures and other experiences. I think it just makes you reflect more on your own personal experiences.
Absolutely. That's so true. Do you think that how does that show up in your marketing when you're marketing to, say, consumers in the US versus consumers in the UK or Europe? How do you shift to adapt to the culture?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for us, on our B2B side, most of our organizations we're working with are global organizations who do think about their people like acquisition and people development strategies in like somewhat similar ways globally. On our B2C side, so how we work with apprentices, there are some sort of pretty meaningful differences in terms of the age groups we work with. In the UK, you can finish school at 16. In the US, it's 18. And also, I mean, when we think about what it means to have equitable access, the demographics, that you want to make sure are represented are different in the UK and the US. Like, what is representation in the UK and the US is different because those populations look different. And I also think the conversation around DE&I is rightly different in those two countries. And so I think it does show up in our marketing, like from as straightforward as vocabulary and targeting to as complex as what are the issues we want to take a proactive and forward-leaning stance on externally. We obviously, many organizations will have had discussions around what are we going to say on the abolishment of Roe v. Wade? Like, what does that mean to the communities that we support? The horrific shooting that happened yesterday in the US and the the Buffalo shooting last week, we constantly think about, like, as a company that represents individuals who are trying to get equitable access to opportunity, like, how do these like very challenging and horrific acts happening in the US right now degrade that ability or potential of opportunity for individuals. And so I think that means that we have really different conversations about what do we need to be as a brand in those two markets.
That makes a lot of sense. Can you talk about how consumer behavior is informing your work and what is new and shifting that is changing it?
Yes. I mean, Scott Galloway actually posted an article last week. It was sort of looking at changing consumer trends, and Netflix, I think last year was watched for 9.6 trillion minutes. TikTok was watched for 22 trillion. And so social media is our top sort of channel for reaching young adults as apprentices. And when we say social media, we mean TikTok and Instagram. And our Instagram videos get much more reach than TikTok. Sorry, wrong way around. Our TikTok videos get much more reach than our Instagram videos. It doesn't mean we don't find Instagram to be incredibly valuable. But what I will say is how right now, for brands looking to reach young adults, I think, TikTok is an incredible avenue to meet them where they are. And I know some have been like potentially a little more cautious to adopt just because the trending sounds, the need to move quickly on new videos, and it is user generated content, and user generated content is what does best there. And I guess I just share that we've really approached that we have our apprentices come for content days. And all of our, many of our marketing apprentices and all of our different apprentices come, and they want to contribute to our content. And so we do fun days, we do lunch, obviously we, compensate them for their travel and their time. And we all come together to make different TikToks each month. And we create this big bank of content that allows us to then share the story of our apprentices throughout the month. And so I think for brands looking to reach young adults, just with where that channel is right now in terms of reach and resonance, it's just super important to be there.
Absolutely. Can you talk about that and what kinds of content you develop as a brand that is maybe, marketing a job opportunity? And when I think of that, I think of LinkedIn, and I think of, where you would go in these channels to search for work. What does that look like on TikTok?
Yeah, great. This is where I embarrass my entire team and usually do the TikTok dances, and they're like, Rach, stop. What do we do on TikTok? What we're looking to do is let people know what an apprenticeship is. It's an opportunity to earn while you learn, have no debt, and work at the world's best organizations. And so we're just trying to deliver that sort of some of these core messages on what an apprenticeship is and where they can go to learn more. We actually do at times promote specific opportunities, jobs in New York this week, and we'll do what we call roles of the week. So we'll say these are all the roles, software engineering roles at Amex. Amex actually has digital marketing roles open right now in New York. American Express has digital marketing roles open in New York right now. And so we'll also promote that. And I think the idea here is for young adults, there are trends like work talk. That's a key one. There are many different trends on TikTok that directly relate to the search for employment and the development of skills to be successful in employment. And so it's not just about cute dance moves. Those messages may be delivered through cute dance moves, but actually, young adults are learning about all aspects of their lives, through TikTok. Our highest ever web traffic by 30% in Multiverse's history was last week, and it was generated by an influencer on TikTok. One video.
Wow. And what was it?
It was someone who it's oh, I can't believe this is true. This is so incredible. Look at all these amazing marketing roles at American Express in New York. And she was sort of emulating a story, a post we'd done previously showing the New York roles. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Going back to your experience in leadership, can you talk about which experiences best prepared you for the leadership role that you're in today?
Ooh. I'd worked at quite fast-growing small companies early in my career. And so that gives you a lot of autonomy and a lot of experience being the owner and having to work it out, which is super helpful. When I joined LinkedIn, I got a bit of a shock. I had to write pre-reads and executive summaries and do 2x2s. And I'd never worked in consulting. I had no idea what any of this stuff was. And so I'd say the best thing I ever did was going to a large organization to understand how to do structured communication, how to work with a large number of stakeholders to get to great decisions. And so I think the combination of small, fast-growing companies, and I mean, LinkedIn was a very fast-growing company too, but large organizations is what today allows me to sort of oscillate between, this is where Multiverse is. I can see where we're going to be several years from now. We can build with that North Star in mind. But we also know that, we're a Series C company, right? We also have the team size that we have today and the budgets that we have today. And so we need to work out how to step ladder our way up there. I think by having been at small companies where I know how to get things done with limited resource and knowing where we'll get to eventually, I know the little steps we need. I know what that step ladder looks like.
That makes sense. And you have both sides of the coin because you were at the small companies and then obviously the experience at the large companies.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. So with that in mind, what is top of mind for you as you think about supporting and engaging today's consumers?
I was thinking about this actually. I mean, I think this is true. So I've worked, my last 3 jobs have been at marketplace businesses. So they do B2B and B2C, and you sort of span those 2 sides. I think what I've noticed in my career is that as someone who's had the chance to work at marketplace businesses with, CXOs and 16-year-olds, that there's not as much difference between those 2 audiences as we make out. Everyone wants to understand the value that's in it for them. And everyone wants to be spoken to in a language that resonates with them. And for a CEO, yeah, that's different than an 18-year-old. But the approach and the framework that you execute to be successful in that is the same. And so when I think about that, I think, if our most common medium is a 16-second video, we better have on TikTok, we better have a pretty straightforward, resonant message that can be communicated quickly.
That makes sense. So then how are you personalizing the consumer experience as you partner, from the start with, say, a partner who's the CEO of American Express to an 18-year-old who's starting their career and trying to take it further? How do you create the different language?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say every CEO we speak to cares about 2 things right now. They care about having organizations that represent the communities they serve, right? They care about equitable access to opportunity. That's something every CEO deeply cares about. And they also care about their skill gaps. They know they have technical skill gaps and they have durable skill gaps, durable sometimes called soft skills. We don't call it that, but in case anyone on the call doesn't know. And so when we speak to CEOs, we speak about those 2 problems, because apprenticeships are a solution to those 2 problems. And so that's how we frame. And then we speak to a young adult, like their problem is, incredible potential, no idea how to apply it because some of the opportunities that they deserve aren't accessible to them. And so the core message there is, this is for you. Like, people will opt out of our apprenticeships because they can't believe that they are qualified. And so our core message there is like, this is like, this is an opportunity for you. And this will allow you to develop your durable and technical skills and, work at an organization that deeply cares about transforming, the demographics and the equity of the individuals at that organization. And so both are being told the same message. There's no dissonance between it. But it's just led with a different starting point.
That makes a lot of sense. Can you talk about what's been the most successful campaign or strategy that you've led in the last year?
Yeah, I feel like I already did a spoiler on this one, which is that it was for B2C, it's definitely TikTok, and sort of highest ever web traffic from that. For B2B, actually, it's obviously account-based marketing and all of those things are the bedrock of what we do, and partnering deeply with our sales team to make sure that every prospect that's on their list is also on marketing's list. But I think the standout thing for me has been the return to in-person events. People are really excited to reconnect with their peers and have an opportunity to come together. And picking a few key moments to do that has been like, a great generator of leads, but also a great opportunity to get in-person time for us with our potential customers to understand what's top of mind and reconnect personally, and for them to get a sense of where their industry is and what their peers are doing. It feels like people have sort of lost touch a little bit with those communities over the last several years.
Definitely. I know at Brand Innovators, we've started doing the in-person stuff and it's just been like wonderful. People are so happy to get back out there and
Yeah.
see each other in person.
I mean, me too. Thank goodness. Let me out.
Yes. Although, I mean, of course, we've found the benefit of this and doing these live casts, and like it's not going to go away, but it's this balance now of both.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm here in our office today and I couldn't be more glad to be here.
What are Multiverse's challenges, and are there with redefining the category of apprenticeship?
Yeah, I mean, university's been around, or college has been around for hundreds of years. They've had a lot of time to build their brands, and we all see those sweaters with the university emblems like braised on the front, and we really think about how Multiverse is going to be the logo of choice. We think about how to build a brand equity around ourselves as an aspirational choice versus college or university. And so when I think about category building, I think there's two jobs to do. One is, what is an apprenticeship, and how do we build a consistent understanding and awareness of what that is? I can't wait until a friend, family member, mentor, guidance counselor, will recommend an apprenticeship, in a careers guidance session. And then when I think about Multiverse specifically, I think, how does that become how does that become a logo that is also considered aspirational? And we're seeing that change. I mean, in the UK, absolutely. And I think it's now just how do we build on that success in the UK and here in the US.
Why do you think Multiverse is growing, and why is there such a huge problem that needs solving?
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, there's 500,000 additional workers needed this year to fill jobs in the digital sector, which is 3 times the number of computer science graduates. And so there's just a real, there's just a hard skill mismatch there right now. And in the US, actually, if one large tech organization shared with us, if they hired every single computer science graduate in the US this year, they still would have open roles. And so from a pure skill gap issue, there has to be an alternative to, college or university. And at the same time, 3.4% of individuals in the UK who claim free school meals make it to a top university, 3.4%. And in the US, Black and Hispanic Americans are disproportionately excluded from jobs that require degrees. And so there has never been, when we think about the skill gap, when we think about building organizations that represent the communities they serve, there has never been a more acute time to address those. And we're hearing that from CEOs. And so I think the acknowledgement that what we've done can't be what we keep doing is universal. And I think that is what has powered Multiverse's growth over the past several years.
That makes sense. How are you addressing the for the people who are coming in, say from Stanford, and then somebody who's coming in from Multiverse? How are companies ensuring that there's this equality and the same value placed on this talent as they enter the companies and work together?
Great question. The last thing that we would ever want is for someone to be othered because they're an apprentice, right? That is absolutely not the spirit of what we do or the spirit of any organization we work with. We're seeing, in the UK, apprenticeships are now a part of most major organizations' strategy for early talent. Companies have apprenticeship departments, who are sort of just like you would be for fresh graduates. And so that's a big part of how they think about generating access to opportunity and developing opportunities for individuals. And we're starting to see that in the US too. I know at LinkedIn, we have an apprenticeship, team, apprenticeship program managers, and they have apprenticeship programs in place that they run internally. And we're seeing that at other leading organizations in the US too. And so we're beginning to partner with those organizations who have apprenticeship programs internally, to work out how, how Multiverse can also run alongside those programs, and replace, or potentially like assist and replace those programs. And then for organizations who haven't quite got to that point yet, where they feel like they can run apprentice programs themselves, obviously we can do that for them. And so I think to your original question, how do we make sure someone isn't othered as an apprentice? The goal here is to make apprentices just one of the key paths into an organization. It is not othering because it's a large group of people. It's considered a producer of excellent individuals, and those individuals are still there progressing throughout the organization and mentoring and sponsoring new incoming apprentices.
That makes a lot of sense. Excellent. So just my last question for you would then be, what do you think is the future of work?
Oh, that's it. What do I think is the future of work? Work's seen a lot of changes over the last several years, which we all know about, so I'm not going to bore us by going on discussing those. We really have, when we think about a potential economic downturn they're about to experience, there will be a lot of pressures on margins at organizations. And those pressures on margins will translate to how can we automate this? And how can we automate this will translate to how can we use data and engineering skills to automate. And so it will only further, sort of exacerbate and accelerate that skill gap. And so I think that is going to be something that will continue over the next several years. And then I think retention, right? We've seen this over the last several years. It's been incredibly challenging for organizations to attract and retain talent. I'm not sure how that's going to change in this coming year. But what I do know is every CEO now recognizes that their competitive differentiation is people. And whether you're in a downturn or not, that having the best people at your organization is what will stand you apart. And so I think there's never been more commitment to attracting high potential individuals and developing them. And I think that's where a lot of the future of work space, how to offer better benefits, how to understand attrition risks, all of this, software and programs and services around future of work. It is really how can we make sure the thing that's of most value to our business people are understood,
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. This has been really insightful. I love talking, and we're so happy to have had you. I hope to have you back again.
Yeah, great to meet you, Diana. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
See you. Bye.
Bye. Okay. That was a great session. So for our next session, we will have Johan Evano, Global Marketing Director of Streamers and Creators at Logitech for Creators, as well as moderator Taylor Bonham, the Senior of Midwest Sales at Influential. Hi, Johan. Hi, Taylor.
Hi.
Hello. How is everyone?
Good. Thanks for being here today. Welcome, both of you. We're excited to hear your session. So I will let you two take it away.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Johan. How are you?
Hey, Taylor. I'm good. Thank you. And you?
Good. Yeah, we just connected last week. I'm in Chicago, so it is 7:40 here. So I'm not a morning person. So I hope the session goes well. And Johan is currently in Switzerland, which we talked about that I need to visit in Geneva. But yeah, super excited to kick off this session. Yeah, Johan, where do I start? So he was at P&G for 12 years, which really allowed him to build some solid fundamentals on brand building and business savviness. And he's actually at Logitech right now. So he's been there about 4.5 years as a marketing director for Logitech's music category. And he expanded his scope by recently taking on the streamers and creators category, which I'm super excited to talk to him about today. And then in parallel, he's a musician, which is super cool. So his passion of being a musician really is a natural link to the new category he's working on at Logitech. So yeah, super excited to have you. How's your day? How's your day going so far? Or how's your night
Pretty
going?
good.
What time is it?
No, it's only 2:30 p.m. So that's totally fine. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. It's not as late as I thought it was.
Nah,
But
no.
I was gonna say we're gonna start off. I always like to ask a personal question before we like dive into the nitty-gritty here. But if you could describe yourself in 3 words, what would those words be, Johan?
You mean at work or in general?
In general, let's get to know you first.
All right. Okay. I would say first one would be passionate, both for work and outside, because that's if you don't do things with passion, then you might as well try something else. So that's the first one. The second one is I like to do stuff with other people, and actually that's how I think best as well. It's bouncing ideas off of each other. I usually think better than on my own, sitting on my desk. So at my desk. So that's the second one. And the third one is I'm trying to keep things lighthearted, even if whether it's at work or outside. But even if we do some serious stuff, but there is only so much seriousness we can have, and I think from time to time, having a bit of fun is useful, whatever the context. So that would be me.
I love all 3. I feel like I'm all 3 too. So I feel like we're
We're gonna have a good time.
Similar. I feel like you need to have a freshness and silliness about you, especially in these times, right? You shouldn't take everything so serious. And it definitely seems like you collaborate with a lot of people at Logitech, and you're a musician. So that's super cool. And at Logitech, what role, does leadership play in fostering a data-driven culture?
Yeah, I mean, at Logitech, as in every other company, budgets are always scarce, regardless of the industry or the company size. So every dollar spent needs to be justified. So basically, at Logitech is, if I summarize it bluntly, it's no data, no money. It's pretty simple. And honestly, I think it's the right mindset because one thing I used to say in my previous job is money sometimes can make you lazy. And when I was at P&G, I think a lot of people would agree that P&G is a big company with lots of money. But at the same time, sometimes it kind of when you have very little money, you need to think really hard about how to invest that little money you have. And frankly, you ask yourself some pretty fundamental questions. And later on, if you have much bigger budgets, maybe you stop asking yourself those questions. So I think for me, it's, and by the way, given that we have also more data than ever now, frankly, that's a bit of a shame if we don't use that data to make the strongest possible plans, again, regardless of the budget. And I think that's our job as marketeers to use the company money wisely and the best possible way. So I think sometimes it hurts, or sometimes it's hard to say until you show me data, you don't get the money. But fundamentally, I don't think it's a CFO thinking, so no, I don't want to give anyone money. It's more, I think, a marketeer purpose to say, well, what would you do if it was your money? And that's how I see it.
I couldn't agree more. And how is the culture like internally? I'm curious. Do you guys do any you foster relationships with your team? Like how do you guys stay sane in this working from remote world that we're now in?
Well, for us to stay sane, and I'll speak about myself for a second, I would have to be sane in the first place, and I'm not so sure about that. But no, I think the last 2 years have been quite crazy for everyone. Personally, as I said, right now I'm working from home, and that's easy. But at the same time, yes, you save time in commuting and so on. But at the same time, you just miss physically seeing people. There's probably 70% of the people I work with now that I've never met in person, which is tough because when you're in front of someone for a day or two, and you have, lunch or dinner and so on, you can have those kind of more human connections instead of let's jump on a Zoom for 1 hour and discuss about business topics and then see you next week. So I think it's a really different way to manage that. It looks like everyone had to deal with it, but I know not everyone was, at ease with it. Personally, I'm okay to work from home. I know I have some friends and colleagues who, struggle much more. But still, those human relationships, I don't think anything will replace that anytime soon. So,
yeah, I'm with you. I'm an in-person type of girl. So for Influential, got to go to New York last month, which was super exciting to meet our team because I've been seeing them on Zoom calls for the past 6 to 7 months already. But you have so much expertise in leadership roles, just being at P&G for over 12 years. I know when we connected last week, you mentioned that you were going to take an internship in London, but then they're like, we want you in Switzerland for a actual position. But what are some of the most important leadership lessons that you've learned throughout your career? And like, what was it like before you learned that lesson, and what was it like after?
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind is, I would say it's amazing to see what we can achieve when no one cares about who gets the credit. And that means, you as a manager, you as a team member, in the end, that's always something that I've tried to have, again, as a team member or a team leader, to make sure that everyone was contributing to their area of expertise. And, as a leader, your job is to make sure that you have the right combination of these, skills, which is both professional skills and human interactions. And that's probably, both the most challenging and exciting part of managing a team, is to find the right profiles and make sure that everyone works together. But eventually, making sure that everyone feels part of a bigger purpose, and not just I've done it, so therefore I will get the credit, and I don't care about the guy next door who did also something else. But this time it's for me to shine. I've always thought about it as we're all in the same boat, and eventually what matters is whether what we do is meaningful and successful in the market. Who did what? As long as everyone contributed to their skill set, I usually don't care that much. So for me, that's the first point. The second point is more from experience as well. Is usually I've noticed that when you don't get what you want or need or expected from, say, an agency or even your colleagues, I usually start looking at my own brief before saying, oh, it's because they're not good, or he's not, because usually there is something in it to say, I will use the polite way to say it, but garbage in, garbage out. And sometimes when you write a brief, you're very clear on what you want, but what ends up on a document may not be everything you have in mind. So for you make connections between all these things, but when you're seeing just the document, you may not have all those insights and so on. And I think that's a good reminder for all of us to say, am I, communicating clearly what I'm trying to do? And if not, then before, instead of blaming the others, probably, look at yourself. Mm-hmm. And I've tried to do it. It's not very easy, but I think it's a healthy approach. And the last point I would mention is, I was talking before about the people management. I think it's as I was saying, it's super exciting because you really need to connect with people. You need to understand what motivates them, what level of guidance they need. Some of them want more, some of them want less. So somehow, as a people manager, you need to adapt to each profile and make sure that they actually can work together. So that's the cool part. And when I started getting reports, when I started managing people, I was like, cool, now I have people to do my work. Yes. Didn't really turn out to be that way, surprisingly enough. But I think it's really about make sure that you provide the right guidance, you motivate them, you find the way to excite them about the work. And as I'll quote Spider-Man's uncle, it's like with great powers come great responsibilities. And the higher up you go in a company, the more people you manage. And therefore, the more people can blame you if anything is not working. I think you need to accept that as a manager to say, well, yeah, if something's not working, it's for you to fix it. And that's tough, but that's also super exciting.
It's like love Spider-Man, love Marvel. That's like the last thing I heard. But the first example you mentioned, I think it's huge to like give your coworkers or like your team a shout out. That could be like on Slack when I was at TikTok and at Influential. It's very like a team and very good team environment, very positive, where yes, the whole team worked on a project, but it's nice to give someone a shout out if they went like beyond, above and beyond, right, for a project. Yeah, I love all three. I feel like you're crushing this right now. And welcome to the creator role. So now you're working with creators and streamers. I mean, totally different kind of what you were doing at P&G. So in your opinion, I think you said you've been in this role for 8 months now. What do you think is kind of like the leading social platform where creators can kind of stand out the most, that is helping Logitech with marketing currently?
First off, I don't think there is one channel that leads for all creators. If you're a gaming streamer, you probably, Twitch is probably your main channel. If you're a YouTuber, well, YouTube is probably your main channel. So I think for me, it really starts with being clear on who you target and, being where they are. And that does not mean being everywhere for everyone, because then you go crazy or you don't have enough money. But I think, when we develop for me, when it comes to deciding which platform to focus on, it's really about putting ourselves in the shoes of the viewer, like what's in it for them. If I'm on YouTube, do I go to YouTube for the same reason as TikTok or, Snapchat or whatever? So, every platform has a purpose, and our job is to say, okay, is my audience going on this platform? And if yes, then what are the codes for this platform? And, there was a time when we were saying, we can have the same assets across the board and that's easy peasy. Doesn't really work. But I think it's really, and that I suspect I will repeat myself a few times in that discussion, but it's really about starting with understanding who you market to, and what's going on. What are they trying to do? Those creators, for example, is it education, some tutorials, or this is how you can set up your gear or whatever? Is it entertainment? Is it inspiration? So why are people going to these platforms? And that starts there. And then our job as brand builders or marketeers is to make sure that we give them something that fits with that objective they have, what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. And if we just go with, here's my big ad that has nothing to do with the reason why you went on this platform to begin with. And by the way, we see that all day long, right? But how often do we yes, algorithm help target and so on, but how often do we really click on those ads when you're looking for a video on YouTube and you just need to go through 20 seconds of something that you don't care about? So it's really about how can I connect with the viewer, with the audience, and give them something meaningful on that platform. And whenever we as a brand manage to do that in a what feels like an authentic connection, let's say, that is where I think the power, or it gets much more powerful, and we get much more traction from consumers. So I think. Yeah.
I definitely think the smaller the budget's, right, you should kind of focus on that one platform rather than like a multi-platform approach. I see that a lot at Influential and other companies that I've worked at, which is very interesting. But how is Twitch? I'm curious, like how you work with obviously streamers and creators on Twitch, but like, can you give us an example of like a campaign you've ran on Twitch? Because it's so interesting to me.
Yes, with Twitch, actually, we work with them as part of the work we do with Amazon advertising. So there is some activation that we do on Twitch. In this case, Twitch is managed as a media platform. And then separately, so we do have, we have done in the past a few partnerships with them at kind of brand level. Nothing major. I think we're, discussing with them on that front. But probably there's something. There will be some new things coming up. But frankly, I mean, usually most of the time when we work with Twitch, we actually don't work with Twitch. We work with creators on Twitch. And these are the people who we are selling products to. By the way, maybe I should have started with that. When I say, I'm managing the streamers and creators category, that category is basically Logitech providing products for all content creators. So that means Blue microphones, that means webcams, that means lights, that means wireless cameras. So all the types of products, and mice and keyboards, of course, because that's the original business from Logitech, and it still is the biggest part of the business. But what I'm doing is basically selling products to all content creators so that their content look great on screen, they sound great. So that's why working with them when they are on Twitch or any other streaming platform, when you have a mic, which of course I don't have now, but if I were to have to use one of the many mics I have at home, that this mic, you see it on screen. So that's also something that is important for us to work with creators and make sure they are happy with the product they have. It's not like a big fat product placement. Here is a check and there you go. It's like, no, we don't do that. Actually, we want them to experience the product, and if they like it, great, they use it. If they don't, fine, they'll find something else. Mm-hmm. So it's really about, Twitch is more the platform on which we connect with creators most of the time.
And Johan, you're doing, are you marketing to different, like US? Are you like marketing to the US, UK? What markets are you like targeting?
So yeah, so
global approach type of thing.
Yeah, so I have a global role. But I'd say the two biggest regions we have are North America and Europe. But we also have quite some business in Australia, in China, in Japan, and so that's actually part of the cool. That's part of the cool thing about this job is that you talk to many different people, many different cultures, and both the people you work with and also the people you market to, and really trying to understand what's going on. For example, in China, you have a lot of people who are simply using their mobile to create content, and to do things that me as a French, I wouldn't think would be possible, like having 3 mobiles and doing a ton of things with it. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. So understanding those cultural differences and dynamics also makes it both interesting, intellectually interesting, but also begs the question of how do we drive scale in our operations. And there is some that we can do, maybe not as much as maybe our finance friends would like, but that's what we need to do. Yeah.
Thank you. And there is so much competition out there. Obviously, we're talking about advertisements. You see them on YouTube, the ones you don't want to see, things you don't care about, products you don't care about. So what are, the ways in which you're working to ensure that Logitech stands out on these platforms, on Twitch, on TikTok?
Yeah. So, and maybe I was just mentioning the product portfolio that we have, but just to give you a bit of background, 2.5 years ago, so Logitech has been around for 41 years. 2.5 years ago, what we call the streamers and creators category did not exist at Logitech. We were still selling mice and keyboards and headsets. And then Logitech bought the Blue Microphones brand. Then we bought the Mevo wireless cameras. We bought the Lytra lights. We bought the Streamlabs software to actually build that category to be able to provide full solutions to content creators. And but for the last 2 and a bit years, these were like 4 individual businesses, meaning if you didn't know that they were part of the same company, that would not be the case for you. So the first thing we did a few months ago was we brought all these brands together under an umbrella brand called Logitech for Creators. I know that's a surprising name for a company like Logitech and selling to creators. So the intent here being to facilitate the shopper journey, because instead of starting from scratch with every product category, you say, look, I have this kind of one-stop shop where I have this platform and I see actually many products available. Some of them I would need now, some of them I would need later. So it helps us to leverage the Logitech brand equity, which again, we've been there for a while. So that's a pretty healthy equity. But at the same time, making people's life easier with like one brand, one design, one pack design, or look and feel that will make people feel, oh, okay, I know this brand now. They also have this and they also have that. So that's easier for them. So that's the first thing we did. And the second thing is actually last month, we launched a new communication campaign called Together We Create. And the purpose of this campaign is to really put the creator at the center of everything we do. So because if you think about it, sometimes the work of the creator can be very lonely. You need to think about the creative idea you'll have, and then you need to write the script or shooting or whatever, then record it yourself, edit it, post it, manage comments. So it's a lot of work, and usually especially when creators start, they need to do it all. So what we're trying to do here is to say, look, we're here to help you. Of course, we provide you great products that are easy, plug and play, all the things that they would want. But we also want to make them feel that we're with them, like beyond the product side, but helping them get successful, giving them tips, giving them visibility on mental health challenges. So that's one of the big issues with big creators today. They feel they can't disconnect. So what do you do? What can we do to help them realize when it's actually getting to a place where they shouldn't be? So it's really about the purpose of that Logitech for Creators brand and Together We Create campaign is really to create that meaningful connection with creators beyond selling them products. It's really about, hey, and some of them actually have already played that back to us to say, look, it feels like you're with me. Like I started 2-3 years ago and you've helped me grow by, multiple things. And that's really what we want to do. Whether you have 5 or 50 followers or 5 million, it's not the point. So that's what we try to do to connect with our audience.
I love how you're giving back to the creator community. I think that's great. I also think I need Logitech products. I'm not a creator by any means, but I'm always online and always on social media platforms. So I think I need to get some.
I think we can work something out. Yeah.
But what innovations and technologies are you utilizing to execute your strategies on, again, like that global scale?
I would mention 3 things. The first one is spanning across a spectrum of activities. The first one is if we look at when like many people I'm sure listening now, when you have a broad geographic scope, it's very difficult to track manually how everything is implemented. So we have a full stack software engineer who has been creating like bespoke apps and softwares for us, which now apparently lots of people also want. So that's good. But one of the things that he created was an app that helps us track all the e-tail or e-commerce content, how it's being implemented across all our key platforms. Because you can say, look, here is a set of assets, we send it to all the regions, and then if only 10 or 20% of it is being used, that kind of defeats the purpose. So, and we know that we have hundreds of customers globally, so we can't have every market check it manually. So that's one of those things that help us make sure that the strategy gets translated into what consumers see eventually, because that's the whole point. So that's one thing. The second one is we have also an internal platform called Voice of Consumer. And this one is basically an aggregator of all online reviews on your products and your competitors' products. And that helps us to always kind of stay in touch with how people perceive our products and what they like, what they don't like. Also get a feel of what could be missing with our products, and that helps feed the product development thinking. So, okay, right now looks like we're doing great on this and this and that, but that one seems to be missing or behind. So can we do something there for the next generation of products? So that would be like the second point that is also very, very useful. And the third one is probably the most straightforward or commonly used, but leveraging platforms like Tracker or Chorus Tracker for influencers that I'm sure, Taylor, you're very familiar with, Chorus for social media and so on. So the intent being really to always try to find the right profiles of people to work with, but also make sure that we monitor and we track what's working best or not. And the one that are working best, can we derive some patterns that help us create content based on what works already, instead of throwing everything against the wall and see what sticks, which sometimes happens. So it's really about optimizing the plans and getting some regular feedbacks on what we do, amplify what we do, what works, drop or change what doesn't. So these would be like 3 examples of how we leverage technology to try to optimize our plans. Yeah.
Well, those are all great technologies. I'm like, we'll have to meet after this and talk about influential and how we can help you with creators as well. But yeah. What's top of mind as you are preparing for the second half of 2022? Obviously, we're almost there, I feel like. So we can even talk about next year. What does the first half of the year look like in 2023?
Yeah, I mean, first off, we've just had 2 years of COVID that changed a lot, the consumer and shopper behavior. So we saw, for example, a significant increase in e-tail or e-commerce sales because the stores were closed at some point. So it did change some of the behaviors. For example, in Australia, e-tail was always a very small, much smaller portion of the overall sales than in the rest of Asia or in Europe or North America. And now actually we have seen this starting to shift. So one of the questions I'm asking myself is, okay, so is that, we moved from here to there, would it go back to the original place, or would it keep going that way, or somewhere in the middle? So from a channel management point of view, that's one thing that I'm asking myself now. The second point is also due to the COVID effect, because people were at home. Lots of people decided that it would be great to get started with a YouTube channel or whatever, start streaming on Twitch. So we saw a massive increase in sales in category growth, basically, for the content creator product, which is great when it happens. And then you have that in the base, and then that artificial bubble somehow is not there anymore. So what is the new base that we should look at? That's to me another point that we need to look into. And the third one is that the creator economy keeps growing. So there is no there is no debate there, and more people want to create content on multiple platforms. More and more people improve as well, so upgrade their setup or upgrade the quality of what they do anyway. So of course that becomes increasingly attractive to many brands. So another thing that I have in mind is, okay, how do we manage the growing competition, and how do we still stay ahead? Back to your previous question on how do you connect with them and so on. If you have a proper genuine connection with them, that does help. It doesn't guarantee it will stay forever. You need to nurture it, but it's a good start. And I would say, for me, the last point is, unfortunately, with the high volatility from a macroeconomic environment, between the conflict in Ukraine, inflation everywhere, component shortages in Asia, and all these things that are happening, that are interconnected. There is a lot of uncertainty on where the business is going to go, but also where the consumers are going to go. Because with inflation, they will have to make choices on what they decide to spend their time and money on, and what will that be? That we need to see. So I think there are a lot of things going on, a lot of volatility. But for me, it keeps coming back to the same point, to say, we need to stay focused on our audience. What do they have in mind? And if we're listening to them carefully enough, I think those broader macroeconomic factors will come into play when they tell you, how they feel, what they're looking for, what they want to do. So instead of me trying to have a crystal ball and predict everything that's going to happen in the world, I'll actually keep listening to my audience to try to understand how we can best help them succeed in whatever they want to do.
It's like, I see Diana. I was like, I think we have a little bit more time, so I'm going to keep going. Talking about innovations and technologies again. So digital marketers, obviously we have to keep up to speed, right? On what's coming out. And this kind of includes understanding the metaverse. Some people are very excited about the metaverse. Some people are not. And it's full potential. So how is your brand kind of aligning with the rise of metaverse and this digital forward environment? Are you playing around with it, or?
We just did, actually, last month, 4 weeks ago. Yeah, we did. We had an event in the metaverse on Roblox. And this one was actually, last year we did an event to celebrate the best up and coming creators on TikTok. So that was an event we hosted in partnership with TikTok. It's good. And then we said, now this year, for the second season, how can we make it even more exciting for creators? And that's why we created that event on Roblox. And it's called the Songbreaker Awards. We did this year. We partnered with several artists like Lizzo or Gail, and also we had some important creators jumping in, like Jaden Smith or Shroud, or guys from multiple gamers or actors, singers, or whatever. So the intent being to have a fun interactive event where people can join and walk around the artificial world and try to have some fun connecting with people all over the world. So, and this, frankly, we got much more traction than I shouldn't say that probably, but we got more traction than I was expecting. So we had people from 150 markets all over the world. We had millions of visitors and so on, and the quality of interactions was also very good. So that's a good example where, if back to my point about, are you doing something to educate or entertain or stuff, this was mainly entertainment, but if you do it well, it will anyway influence how people perceive your brand. So that was a cool event. Yeah.
Well, that sounds awesome. And it sounds like you had a lot of cool content creators and celebrities, which probably helped. What do you think personally about the metaverse? Are you a fan? Right? Obviously you're doing it for Logitech, right? I'm just curious.
I'm as a marketeer, I find it they're interesting. As a person, I'm already busy enough trying to figure out what to do with my real life. That's probably right now. Let's say that's probably not where I would spend my time. But again, I think staying in touch with the audience as well. It's like it's a choice, and people do whatever they want. But for sure, we can't not have it in mind when we these days. So we need to work with it.
Yeah, and then I have one question, and if we have a few minutes, if anyone has any questions they want to shoot over, please feel free to enter those in the chat. How are creators, I'm just working with like Jada Smith and other content creators, how are they loving the metaverse? What does that look like working with a creator on the metaverse versus like a platform like Twitch or TikTok? Is it different? Like, how does it vary?
I think there is always this the feeling of this new shiny object that people get excited about because they say, oh, maybe that's going to be the next big thing, or maybe it's going to help me create a different type of connection with my fans or audience or followers than I usually have. So I think a lot of those kind of big creators, they are always trying to look at the latest, greatest technologies to help them maximize their reach and connect with more and more people. So there is this element of technology savviness. That gives me another outlet to talk to people, to interact with people. And with the same with NFTs, by the way. We see some artists going big time on it, and some others going, what is that about? I don't understand. So again, I think it really depends on their personal kind of, are they interested in that kind of more technologically advanced platforms, or more, I want to stay with my usual stuff and that's it. But also, what do my audience want to see from me? And I remember maybe a couple of years ago, there was the Travis Scott doing a show on Fortnite, which was massive. Since then, we had there were a few other events like that, but that's the kind of things where you go, wow, okay, I wasn't expecting that. And because of that, you get a massive visibility, because that's new, that's breaking the mold. So there is always, I think, this search for, getting noticed, but doing it in a way that will be seen as meaningful by your audience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I feel like TikTok was a shiny object. I mean, I think it still is for a lot of brands and creators, but now it's like, what's next? What's next always? So that's obviously the metaverse. But I have a few more questions here, but I was going to say, Diana, where are we on time?
I think on time we have to get wrapped up here, but that was an amazing session. So definitely, if people have more questions or want to engage, please reach out to Taylor and Johan. I'm sure they will continue to engage with you. Thank you both so much. That was a fascinating session. And yeah, I'm very excited to see what's next as well. We're definitely keeping our eye on it here at Brand Innovators. Yes. Just want to thank you. Thanks to our speakers, thanks to our sponsors, thanks to our audience, and just want to let everyone know that we will be hosting our Chicago Media Buying Summit. So check out our YouTube page later on today. Just want to